I spent all offseason trying to guess what's going to happen this year, and week one came around, punched me in the mouth, and now we have to update our rankings. Tier 1, most of it's going to stay the same. This may seem crazy, and I understand if you want to roll your eyes at this, but I am going to be ranking CeeDee Lamb ahead of Jamar Chase. Yes, CeeDee Lamb, the guy that just went out there on opening night and dropped 15 passes. But the fact of the matter for Lamb is you had 110 receiving yards out of 188 Dak Prescott passing yards. You had 13 targets. You could have dropped 30 points if you held on to the ball. And I think there are some reasons to be concerned with Cincinnati. Now, obviously, the Bengals are known to start slow and get better as time goes on, so I'm not going to sit here and overreact too much. They're all tier 1 players, and it's up to you. Justin Jefferson, we don't know exactly what he's going to do yet. If we look at the underdog pick'ems, they currently have Justin Jefferson higher or lower 79.5 receiving yards, which I am taking the lower on that, but I'm wrong all the time. Puka Nacua will now be in addition to tier S. If you are looking at what Puka was able to accomplish, not only just the raw numbers, because the raw numbers are insane, right? He goes out there and he has himself 130 receiving yards off of only 245 passing yards for Matthew Stafford. But you take into account that he was in and out of this game with concussion, blah, blah, blah. He's good to go. Don't worry. He only ran 22 routes. He ran 22 out of 32 potential routes, and he had 130 receiving yards. That's over 5 yards per route run. This is a continued trend of Puka Nacua being an elite wide receiver in fantasy last year from a per snap perspective, but having to deal with the injuries. So if Puka remains fully healthy going forward, which it looks like there are reasons to believe that he is going to, Puka's clearly in tier S. And realistically, there's a chance we can move him ahead of Jefferson, to be honest. But we'll see what happens with Jefferson tonight. Now, going down to tier 2, I'm going to have Malik Nabers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Nico Collins. With Nabers, the offense, complete dumpster fire. However, you have one reason that you can potentially be excited, and that reason is going to be Jackson Dart coming in to save the day, where this coaching staff's already said, yeah, they don't know if they're going to keep up the Russell Wilson show if it gets this ugly. So if you think that Jackson Dart can be a good NFL quarterback and you think Jackson Dart can come through and elevate this to be an average offense, Malik Nabers needs that to happen if he's ever going to hit tier S. Amon-Ra St. Brown is in a worse offense than I thought he was going to be in. Amon-Ra St. Brown's a wide receiver that I thought had a very high floor, but frankly, you got to week 1, sportsbooks threw out their implied team totals, and they told us, hey, expect the Detroit Lions offense to be much, much worse this season. Where last year they were number 1 in the NFL in total points scored. Week 1, the projections had them as an average offense, and it turned out they looked like they were a below average unit. Now, the hope is that was just a game against the Green Bay Packers, and we have a 2-year sample for Amon-Ra St. Brown where he has been dominant, and it wasn't just all of Ben Johnson. Now, Nico Collins will be our last wide receiver in this tier, and with Nico Collins, super frustrating. Like, you literally had no Christian Kirk in this game. If there was ever going to be a game in which Nico could find success, it's a game in which he's the only wide receiver. But you have Jaden Higgins, Xavier Hutchinson, Dalton Schultz, Justin Watson, all with more receiving yards than Nico Collins. Nico Collins vaporizes into dust in the air, was absolutely nothing. Now, again, very similar to Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't want to come out here and overreact from week 1 because you do have the 2-year sample for Nico where he's been dominant. But Nico is now on watch. If we get one more week like this, I think you could drop Nico Collins not just down a tier, but honestly down to tier C. But I expect we probably get a bounce back in week 2. Drake London, you had a phenomenal performance from. You had 15 targets. Actually, the fantasy points weren't great, right? I mean, Drake London had 55 receiving yards off 15 targets. That's horrendous efficiency. You get 55 yards off of 15 carries as a running back. We're sitting here going, that's less than 4 yards per carry. For you to have yet less than 4 yards per target is laughably bad, but hell, if the targets are going to be there rest of season, it gives them an extremely high floor in a full PPR format. Is dealing with a shoulder injury, is going to be listed as day-to-day. That will be something to monitor. If that injury turns out to be serious, Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to be moving ahead of Drake London in our rankings. JSN will probably be the biggest riser among the top 15 wide receivers from what he did week 1, because he comes through and he dominates. He goes, oh, Cooper Kupp, yeah, your time has passed. You are the old man in this scenario. And JSN, off of 150 Sam Darnold passing yards, has 124 receiving yards. Off of 16 completions, JSN has 9 receptions. JSN's the only thing in this Seattle Seahawks offense. Now, of course, the offense wasn't very good this week. So JSN, he wasn't going out there and dropping 30 points, but that's in the range of outcomes. If we get Darnold up to 250, 300 passing yards in a game this season, JSN could see a 30-point spike. Now, Brian Thomas will be our last wide receiver in this tier. Very similar to Nico Collins. It's hard with these wide receivers. Wide receivers inherently are going to be a little bit more volatile than running backs, where with running backs, I can go through and I can look at some usage and go, oh, if that's your role in this offense, we can kind of have a good idea of what your expected fantasy points should be going into the future. But Brian Thomas had the role you'd want. He ran 33 out of 33 potential routes, and he had 7 targets leading the team. So, you had the role that you would have wanted for Brian Thomas. The issue is he does absolutely nothing with it. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I want to say, oh, okay, well, we know that Brian Thomas is a good wide receiver. Look, he was a wide receiver 1 his rookie season. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But I will say, even though it looks like we still have him very high as the wide receiver 10, if you look at my overall rankings on flockfantasy.com, you'll see he's fallen down behind so much of the round 2 running backs that he's actually fallen a tremendous amount in the overall rankings, but the wide receiver rankings, he's remained about the same. Now, going down to our next tier, we are going to have Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey obviously played on Friday. We already talked about that. Obviously, I'm going to be live streaming updates after every game that we get. I'll be live streaming after the Monday night game tonight. So if you wanted to come hang out with us, just make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell next to the subscribe button. But we talked about it then. It's okay, well, all the targets are just going to be funneled between the 3 receivers with Quentin Johnston, Keenan Allen, and Ladd McConkey. I still do believe that Ladd McConkey is the most talented wide receiver out of the group, especially looking at what he was able to do his rookie season. And honestly, to be fair, while Keenan Allen does have a really good role week 1, am I going to expect that Keenan gets better as time goes on, or am I going to expect that Keenan gets worse? I'd probably expect that Keenan gets worse, to be honest. Now, A.J. Brown would be our next receiver. With A.J. Brown, you get legitimately nothing against the Dallas Cowboys. I know some people are saying oh, he looks slow. He can't generate separation. We have other people going oh, no, he's the same A.J. Brown. Frankly, I don't know. No volume. This team didn't really have to throw the ball. This team's definitely not going to throw the ball going into the future when they don't have to. It will be very similar to the Nico Collins and Brian Thomas Jr. rankings here, where I'm going to give A.J. Brown the benefit of the doubt. I actually moved a decent amount of running backs ahead of him in the rankings, so he fell down the overall a considerable amount. But in the positional, it's hard to find too many receivers to move ahead of him. But similar to those other guys, if you have another flop week 2, A.J. Brown will be moving down dramatically with my expectations. Mike Evans will be our next receiver. Obviously, Igbuka had way more fantasy points week 1. Igbuka is the guy that came away with the receiving touchdowns. Mike Evans still led this team in targets. And looking at the yards per route run from last year, the year before, the year prior, he has generally improved his efficiency as he's gotten older, which is funny enough. So I'm going to give Mike Evans the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, if Igbuka continues to outproduce him, Evans will slide down these ranks as Igbuka moves up. Garrett Wilson is also a big-time riser. Now, with Wilson, couple different things. One, I don't know if we can say the New York Jets will ever score this many points again this season. 2, while I do believe that Justin Fields has it in his range of outcomes to be an elite fantasy football quarterback based off what Justin Fields can do as a rusher, that is not going to benefit Garrett Wilson in fantasy. Again, when the quarterback runs the ball, that's going to take away passing volume. Now, it was completely fine this week because the Jets went out there and they looked like the best offense in the NFL. And if you believe that the Jets will be the best offense in the NFL, or if you believe the Jets will be a top 10 offense going into the future, by all means, move Garrett Wilson up your rankings. Go put him up inside the same tier as Drake London, JSN, and Brian Thomas. I would just expect that this offense is still below average unit. And we look at the rush to pass ratio. You had 39 rushing attempts in comparison to 22 pass attempts. This is still going to be a very rush-heavy team. Justin Fields is going to be running the ball, picking up rushing touchdowns that will detract from the receivers here. But Garrett Wilson, phenomenal market share numbers, of course, where he has 9 targets out of only 22 Justin Fields pass attempts. Now, T. Higgins is a wide receiver that I started in the Flock League, and thank God Josh Allen saved my ass. It's not like we've locked up the win guaranteed. You'll see that in the Flock League video that comes out Tuesday. I got Hawkinson left. Sal has DJ Moore. We'll see what happens. But T. Higgins did absolutely nothing. And again, the Cincinnati Bengals historically have started a little bit slow. They get better as time goes on. It's very frustrating. So I don't want to nuke T. Higgins in my rankings, just like I don't want to nuke Jamar Chase for only having 3 fantasy points. But I'm fine moving him behind Garrett Wilson. Marvin Harrison looked great. And what's very encouraging for Marvin Harrison is all the targets got funneled only between 2 players. They just got funneled between Trey McBride, Harrison, and nobody else. So if you get some Arizona Cardinals shootouts where Marvin Harrison is able to be that deep threat and command volume at the same time, Marvin Harrison could continue to rise. Now, Courtland Sutton will be our last wide receiver in this tier. With Sutton, to be honest, looking at what he did at the end of last season, I feel stupid to not have just ranked him this highly the entire time. Even in a game in which Bo Nix struggles, where Bo Nix only has 176 passing yards, multiple interceptions, only 1 passing touchdown, you still had Sutton finishing as a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. There's really nobody here to compete with. Troy Franklin was the wide receiver 2 in this offense this week in terms of overall targets, receiving yards, and receptions. And I'm not that concerned about Troy Franklin going into the future. Now, dropping down a tier, I'm going to have Tet McMillan. With Tet, I thought he was about to crush. And the reason is I have the memory of a goldfish, and I forgot that Bryce Young is the worst quarterback in the NFL. Bryce Young, 154 passing yards off of 35 pass attempts, multiple interceptions to 1 passing touchdown. With Tet, though, he was putting up the same market share numbers that we saw in college. This was his first NFL game ever, and the man had 68 receiving yards. The next highest wide receiver on this team was Hunter Renfrow with 11. So he is going to be the dominant alpha. He already established that week 1. The issue is, can Bryce Young just make this a serviceable offense, which right now it doesn't seem like it. I will say as a side note, what the hell? I thought I was golden with all my Xavier Legette and underdog drafts, and Bryce Young screwing us. Devontae Adams will be our next receiver. With Adams, completely fine week, right? I would have wanted him to be a little bit better considering that you had some time playing in this game. With no Puka, Adams, he ran 29 routes. Again, I'm not the biggest Devontae Adams guy. Generally, a wide receiver that's this old, that's on his 3rd NFL team in 2 seasons, I always have my hesitations with, but I know a lot of very smart people were in on Devontae Adams this season. Migbuka will be a big-time riser. Obviously, he comes through where I wanted to be a little bit hesitant jamming the rookies in our starting lineup week 1. He only has 6 targets, which isn't the best. Like 32 Baker Mayfield pass attempts, 6 targets. What? You're looking at a less than a 20% team target share, but the efficiency is phenomenal for the rookie wide receiver that has all the talent in the world. Off of 6 targets, he has multiple receiving touchdowns and 67 receiving yards. Now, to be honest with you, I feel like maybe this is a little bit of an overreaction, me putting him ahead of Tyreek, because you will eventually get Godwin back in this offense. And once Godwin is back in, while typically you expect rookies to be better in the second half than they were in the first half of their season, maybe Godwin does take some stuff away here. Now, going over and looking at Tyreek Hill, obviously Tyreek Hill is stuck in one of the worst offenses in the NFL at this point. And I had hope for Tua this year. I thought, okay, well, maybe it was just the concussions. Maybe it was just the injuries last year. And then once we got to training camp and you were just seeing the interviews coming out of Miami, you were seeing the beat reporters talking about Miami, where typically all you ever get in training camp. It's like the honeymoon phase. Everybody's getting together for the first time in forever. They're all excited. They're not really having to go up against the real defenses, get punched in the mouth, blah, blah, blah. You want to hear like, oh, Tyreek Hill looks better than ever. Oh, Tyreek and Tua, these guys are best friends. But once we got to camp and we had the Tyreek injuries popping up, we had all these weird reports where it seems like the chemistry between Tyreek and Tua is just gone. And then you have all of that rolled into week one where Tua is just horrendous. You have to nuke the Miami guys in the ranks. Terry McLaurin was also horrendous week one. The hope with Terry in this instance is that it's just because he missed camp with the holdout and he will improve as time goes on. Now, with that being said, we kind of saw the same setup with Brandon Ayuk last year, and we kept on telling you to start Brandon Ayuk early in the season, and Brandon Ayuk kept on giving you single-digit fantasy performances. So I'm going to be honest, I'm maybe a little bit hesitant here to tell you to jam in Terry this next week. Travis Hunter will be our next wide receiver. With Travis, it seemed like they were doing everything they could to get him involved early and often. Like they were just going through and go, no, here's the screen. Oh, here is a super quick slant. Get him the ball. Wasn't able to really make any big plays with them, but he did play pretty much as a full-time wide receiver. Whenever they did throw him as defensive back, you had Ted McMillan going out there finally being able to do something. I don't know exactly what the game plan is going to be with Hunter every week going into the future. I see this week one usage and I want to go like, okay, yeah, Travis Hunter is going to be mainly a receiver his rookie season. But we got the report before the game from Adam Schefter that said, hey, yeah, Travis Hunter is going to be mainly a wide receiver this week, but don't get it twisted. That's not going to be the case every week. So again, I don't know how much of that's true. I don't know how much of that we can take away, but I'm going to listen to it. I'm probably going to listen to Schefter. I'm going to assume that we don't have this type of wide receiver usage for Travis Hunter every single week. Now, DK Metcalf will be our next receiver. I started DK Metcalf from the Flock League, and again, I'm chilling because Josh Allen saved me, but for us to have 4 passing touchdowns from Aaron Rodgers and for us to not really get anything from Metcalf, super disappointing. It's first week ever with Rodgers, but you can say it's the same thing for the first week ever with Rodgers for Calvin Austin, for Jonnu Smith, and for Ben Skoranek, and these other guys are scoring touchdowns. So Metcalf led the team in receiving. He had the target volume you'd want to see. In theory, he still has the big play upside, but he's forever been a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 in fantasy. DJ Moore, we are going to see in the game tonight. And I know I've already showed you all this, but I'll let you know the pick'em I'm going with tonight. And I'll be the first person to admit, yes, I'm going to lose. You can laugh at me all you want. We are going to go Caleb higher than 219.5 passing yards. Rome Odunze higher than 49.5 receiving yards. Justin Jefferson fewer than 79.5 receiving yards. That is a $10 entry to win $66. If you wanted to tell me, you can find the link in the description and comment section, but I'd warn you, probably not a good idea based off my recent track record. I will say though, if you use code FLOCK when you sign up to Underdog Fantasy, after you play your first $5, you get $50 added in your account. And on top of that, using code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy is the #1 way that you could support this channel. Now, Rashee Rice will be our next receiver. Rashee Rice, yes, is higher in our rankings this week than he was last week, and that will be the case every single week until he comes back. Every week the suspension goes by, Rice climbs slowly but surely. So Rashee Rice next week will probably be inside tier D with those other names. Devonta Smith will be our next wide receiver. I drafted a bunch of this dude in Underdog Draft, so fingers crossed that we start seeing some passing volume in Philadelphia, but clearly this team, even with the new offensive coordinator, their plan A is to run the ball, and then their plan B is to run the ball, and then their plan C is to run the ball. Plan D is to run the ball a little bit more. I mean, you have to get down to plan Q before they let Jalen Hurts rip it. George Pickens will be our next guy with Pickens. Yeah, nothing week one. I would love to come out here in victory lap and go, oh, I told y'all were overrating George Pickens. The hype wasn't warranted, blah, blah, blah. Fact of the matter is Pickens had a really tough matchup going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. So I don't know if you can take much away from it, other than I do still believe that CeeDee Lamb is just going to absolutely dominate the target share in this offense. Ricky Pearsall is a massive riser. Now, I understand we told a bunch of people to bench Ricky Pearsall week one. I'm sorry, I did not know that George Kittle and Juwan Jennings were both going to get injured. But now that we know that both those guys are down, if Ricky Pearsall is the only person standing left in this offense, Ricky Pearsall will very easily be somebody that you're going to go ahead and you're just going to jam in week 2. Looks like a very easy play. Now, Zay Flowers will be our next receiver. With Zay Flowers, he goes nuclear against Buffalo. Now, of course, if we were looking at this game environment, we knew that Flowers was going to be a good start because the Buffalo Bills, they were favored in this game, and very rarely are you ever going to see the Baltimore Ravens as dogs and get forced to throw the ball. 9 times out of 10, they're just going to be running it over and over and over again with Derrick Henry. We're not going to be blessed with as high scoring games as what we just had week 1. Now, trust me, I would love it. We need more of that in the NFL. But with Flowers' phenomenal performance week 1, I do think we get some regression in future weeks, though. Jamison Williams will be our next receiver. Jamison Williams gets paid. Jamison Williams plays a career-high snap rate. And Jamison Williams is still actually falling down my rankings a bit. Because, again, I stand by, I think that Jamison Williams is a better real-life wide receiver than he is for a fantasy context. Because his value that he gets is he's going to be stretching NFL defenses. He's going to make life easier underneath for Sam Laporta, for Amon-Ra St. Brown, for Isaac Tesla. The offensive coordinator here loves him, but I think it's because Jamison is the key to unlock the offense. And honestly, the offense isn't even that appealing of one, at least from what we saw week 1. Now, our next option is going to be Calvin Ridley. With Calvin Ridley, didn't really like the idea of playing in week 1 with the first week that you had from Cam Ward. And also, it was arguably the worst matchup you could have ever had going up against the Denver Broncos. However, going into the future should be a much better spot for Calvin Ridley. Like week 2, he'll be higher in my rankings than he was week 1. Deebo Samuel will be our next guy. Again, maybe, just maybe. I'm not willing to admit this for 100% fact, but it is a possibility that the pneumonia got to Deebo Samuel last year, and that's why he got fat, and that's why he was bad at football. Maybe he's fully healthy this year, and he ends up being the wide receiver 1 in Washington. But little too early to say, but he is trending in the right direction. Chris Olave, you get solid target volume. But again, you had like almost 50 pass attempts from Spencer Rattler in this game. Olave gets banged up, but he looks like he is going to be good to go. So I am a little hesitant to come through and say that like Chris Olave is for sure going to be this guy going into the future. That we know that Chris Olave is just going to be a locked and loaded every week starter because this should be the worst offense in the NFL. And I don't know if we get 50 passing attempts a game. Rome Odunze, really hope he goes higher than 49.5 receiving yards tonight. We'll see what he does. And then obviously, I'm going to continue to update our rankings on flockfantasy.com every single day. Keon Coleman, big time winner. Now, y'all know my favorite stat that we would look at with the player comparison tool on flockfantasy.com all offseason was the fact that Keon Coleman versus Rome Odunze, their rookie years were very comparable. Keon Coleman to come through and explode the way that he did is super exciting for his year 2 upside, considering the fact that if you go back to his prospect profile, a lot of people saw him and went, you know what? He's not polished. He's not ready, but he does have the upside if he can put it together. Just needs a little bit of time at the NFL level. Now he got a little bit of time at the NFL level, blows up week 1 of his second season, and you're attached to the best quarterback in the NFL and arguably the best offense in the NFL, or at least that's what sportsbooks told us coming into the season. Now, Jordan Addison will slowly but surely move up these rankings. Chris Godwin will slowly but surely move up these rankings. As every week goes by, they get closer to returning. Stephon Diggs will be our next receiver. I have Diggs in the Flock League, and to be honest with you, if I was offered Keon Coleman for him, I don't think I'd accept it. Like again, like if you're just trading inside the same tier, it's going to be up to you. And a lot of times I'm not just swapping to swap. So like, I think you could make a strong argument that we're overreacting with Keon here, that maybe I'm getting a little too excited from the Monday night game where Josh Allen saved my fantasy team. Diggs, I was super disappointed with, though. At the end of the game, he came through with some cheap PPR receptions, but for Kayshon Boutte to have the number 1 job, it's frustrating. Jalen Waddle, I don't want to make the same mistake again. Last year, obviously, we knew you never start Jalen Waddle with no Tua. That's obvious. However, the mistake that I made at the end of last season is continuously telling you Tua's back. You can start Jalen Waddle again. Oh, I know he's been horrible. Put him in. Oh, I know he's been horrible. Give him another shot. Oh, I know he's even worse. Just give one more week. And seeing Jonnu Smith outproduce Jalen Waddle, and Jalen Waddle turned into literally nothing. After now we get that week 1 performance from Tua, this could be an overreaction, but I don't see a world in which I'm that excited to ever go through and put Waddle into my lineup at this point. Matthew Golden will be our next guy. Matthew Golden, you thought he was going to have a really big role considering the Jaden Reed injury, but nope. Honestly, I don't think you can start Golden anytime soon. Looking at Jacoby Myers, Myers absolutely crushes, but also you had like I don't want to say 400. You had over 300 passing yards from Geno Smith. I don't know how many weeks going into the future we get over 300 passing yards from Geno Smith, and how many weeks going into the future we have Brock Bowers getting injured. And then Jerry Jeudy will be our last wide receiver in this tier. I have Jerry Jeudy on my fantasy football team. Realistically, if I got offered Chris Olave for him, I'd probably accept it. If I got offered Rome, I would accept it. If I got offered anyone from like Keon through Jacoby Myers, I'd probably just sit on my hands and go, I don't know. I don't really care. So again, like the way we do this is with these tier lists. In theory, it is just kind of personal preference. Like if you wanted to rank Jerry Jeudy all the way up at wide receiver 33, you do it. I just don't think at this point you could justify Jeudy over any of the tier E wide receivers. Like same thing, like the tier E wide receivers, like if you wanted to rank Calvin Ridley at the very top at 26, I think you can do it. I just don't think you can justify ranking him over the tier D options. But I hope that was able to help you out. And again, I'll just let you know what I'm doing on Underdog for the Monday night game. I'm going to go Caleb higher than 219.5 passing yards, Rome higher than 49.5 receiving yards, Jefferson for fewer than 79.5. After seeing this Lions performance on Sunday, and Ben Johnson, I trust. But of course, if you wanted to tail us on either that Underdog Pick'em or any of the ones that we do going into the future, you can find that link to Underdog Fantasy in the description as well as the comment section. Using code FLOCK, you will get a $50 bonus added to your account after you play your first $5, and you have additional boosted Flock Pick'em packs in the app for you as well, which at this point are 100% toxic, and I would not recommend touching them with the 10-foot pole unless you're ready to lose $5 to $10. But I think that's all I got for you. I really appreciate you, and I really hope I get to see you out with the live stream later tonight.